The ages of characters in Star Wars is something that people usually don't consider. It's an easy thing to miss when you're watching the epic battles and intense drama. It doesn't really come up often, at least not explicitly. But it's always there in the background, and it makes everything a lot more intense when you consider its impacts on the story. One thing that people often complain about is that characters in Star Wars seem stiff. They don't talk in a smooth way, they act unrealistically, and they don't react naturally to the situations that they're in. This is especially true for the prequels. But not everyone can be Han Solo, and what's sometimes missed is the circumstances of the characters through their own eyes. Anakin turns to the dark side quickly, making a fast 180-degree turn and committing unspeakable atrocities. He goes from wanting to kill the Chancellor to becoming his apprentice in the span of a few short hours. For any normal person you think of, this would be unrealistic to the point of breaking the movie. But then you consider Anakin's life. He's raised from birth as a slave in the desert. He has no real father, and his only opportunity for freedom of any kind is to leave his mother forever, leave his home planet forever, and join a strict organization that he knows very little about, with people he barely knows. Then, the leaders of that organization reject him to his face for something completely out of his control. He has to fight in a war, and then his one and only mentor, the person who brought him on this difficult journey to begin with, is murdered, leaving Anakin in the care of a stranger who doesn't really like him. And all of this happens when he's only 9 years old. 9 years old! The fact that he went through so many lifetimes worth of trauma before even turning 10 is already enough to explain his erratic behavior later. Just think about that for a minute. A 9-year-old kid suddenly finds himself losing his home, his mother, his mentor, and everyone and everything he's ever known. Forced to start a new life in a difficult situation from scratch, with adults who have openly said that they don't like him. That's incredibly brutal on any child. But it doesn't stop there. In Attack of the Clones, he's 19 years old. He struggles with emotions, with the only advice he receives being to bottle them up, let them go, or just try to ignore them. It takes a lot of skill to do that in any healthy or sustainable way, and Anakin clearly never learns these skills. He bottles, he fumes, and he rages when things go wrong. He's reckless and anxious and confused, like every normal 19-year-old. But so much worse because of the other difficulties from his childhood. Then add on top of that the sudden death of his mother. Then add on top of that a ferocious battle. And then add on top of that his arm getting cut off and the pressure that comes with his own marriage being banned by the very people who are supposed to guide and protect him. It's a recipe for disaster, and all while he's only 19 years old. By Revenge of the Sith, Anakin is 22. He's a young man, he's competent, and he mostly knows what he's doing, but he still lacks the wisdom, skill, practice, and steadiness of a full adult. Keep in mind that, scientifically speaking, your brain doesn't reach full development until the age of around 25. And after all his struggles, all his traumas, and 3 years of being a general in a brutal galactic war, while managing an interplanetary long-distance relationship in secret, Anakin was still only 22 years old. 22. That's insane. You can then add on to that a powerful dark side user actively manipulating him since childhood. A Jedi Council actively distrusting him with no opportunity for him to redeem himself. And the pressures of suddenly being thrown into an illegal political espionage case. And you can imagine the giant hurricane of confusion that must have been inside his head at all times throughout the story. And he's still only 22 then. That's an insane amount to carry every single day, and it gives a lot more context to him snapping at the end of Revenge of the Sith. But Anakin's not the only one whose age makes a big difference to their character in the prequels. Padme also has her fair share of issues. In Episode 1, Padme is 14. A 14-year-old involved in politics by her parents from a young age, seen as so gifted that she was elected to be queen of an entire planet. And then forced to watch her people suffer a military occupation, and forced to fight in a war with no help from the galactic government. Again, all at the age of 14. She does her best, and has a much better situation than Anakin and manages to do it better than he does. But it's still a lot. It's still way too much. In Attack of the Clones, she's 24. She's been replaced as queen, she's been made senator to the very dysfunctional government that abandoned her as a child, and the people who invaded her home were never brought to justice. And now, she's hiding from multiple serious assassination attempts too, all by the age of 24. Then, forced into hiding, fearing for her life, and overwhelmed with responsibility, not getting much support from anyone, Padme finds herself on an alien world in line for an execution arena. All at the young age of 24, with no real childhood to speak of. A life completely dictated by politics, responsibilities, and fear. With all that in mind, it's no wonder why she looks to her nearest protector and friend for comfort as everything falls apart. But this isn't limited to the prequels. Luke is only 19 when his uncle and aunt are killed, he loses Obi-Wan Kenobi, he leaves his home planet, and he has to fight in a major galactic civil war against a powerful superweapon. Leia is also only 19 when she's leading a galactic rebellion, loses her family, and loses her entire home planet. And even more minor characters have these insane levels of trauma and responsibility at a young age. Boba Fett has no mother, watches his father get beheaded, and then joins a bounty hunter clan in the middle of a galactic civil war, when he's only 10 years old. Not even to mention all the Jedi Padawans, like Ahsoka, Kanan, and Cal, who are only teenagers when they have to start fighting as generals in a galactic war, fight their own friends who turn against them, lose their mentors, and then rough it in the wild of the Empire on their own, while being actively hunted. A core theme of Star Wars is that all the characters have their own traumas and responsibilities to handle from an absurdly young age. Honestly, when considered in relation to our own world, the characters of Star Wars hold it together remarkably well for everything they've gone through. Even Anakin holds out as long as he can, and then he tries to redeem himself in the end. These struggles are where the drama comes from, and what makes Star Wars such a great coming-of-age story with the hero's journey. It's what makes Star Wars inspirational. If 19-year-old Luke can find the will to fight evil despite all his trauma, you can too. If 19-year-old Leia can be a strong leader for her community despite devastating loss, then you can too. If 9-year-old Anakin is brave enough to leave his home to seek a better life in the unknown, you can too. If 14-year-old Padme is persistent enough to save her planet in an unconventional way, then you can too. This is what makes Star Wars special. This is what makes Star Wars characters inspirational heroes to us, even when they make mistakes, and even sometimes when they're villains. At the center of it all is a simple story about hurt people working hard to overcome their struggles and trying to make the world a better place in what ways they can. Not every character does it, and not every character succeeds, but we can still see enough of ourselves in them to remind us of what we can do and what we can accomplish in our own lives and our own world. And that's worth celebrating. So, wherever you are and whatever you're facing in your own life these days, remember that the Force will be with you. Always.